He overturned the fates of great empires, trampled on the backs of Persian kings, and carved his name onto the altar of the gods. But at 32, Alexander the Great, the conqueror of the world, was conquered by something far crueler than a sword or an arrow, a mystery pulsating within his own wine glass. Imagine the scene. Babylon, 323 BC. The air was hot and heavy, smelling of dust, sweat, and expensive perfumes unable to mask the stench of the Euphrates River. In the magnificent palace, the king was no longer mighty. He lay on a couch, his once steel-like body weakened by a fever that came and went like the tide. 15 minutes. That was all. That was the time his physicians and guards had to witness the God-incarnate thrashing between the real world and the afterlife. He complained of a terrible stomach pain, as if being stabbed by a red-hot sword, whispered a servant, his eyes wide with fear. He couldn't speak, his throat was as if crushed by a stone, reported his soldier, his voice trembling at the memory of the once powerful general now lying helpless. The tension began to peak, the room filled with whispers and suspicious glances. Every corner of the palace whispered of conspiracy. The poison theory, a deadly game of ancient espionage. Poison. The word hissed between the curtains. What kind? Strychnine? Or something more exotic, like hellebore, whose symptoms mirrored Alexander's, a burning pain in the gut, fever, hoarseness, and gradual paralysis. Who was behind it? All eyes suspected Antipater, his regent in Macedonia, and his son, Cassander. Those who felt threatened by Alexander's increasing madness. It was said the poison was prepared by Aristotle himself, Alexander's tutor, who feared his student had become a tyrant. The poison was delivered by Iollas, Antipater's youngest son, who happened to be the king's cupbearer. Imagine those moments. Iollas pouring the finest wine into a golden cup. His hand might have been steady, but his eyes avoided the king's gaze. Invisible white grains dissolved in the dark red liquid. Alexander drank it, perhaps after an exhausting day. It wasn't a sword attack on the battlefield, it was an elegant, vicious, and deeply personal assassination. The disease theory, nature's inescapable revenge. But there is another, more terrifying narrative due to its simplicity. Nature was taking revenge. After conquering continents, perhaps Alexander had conquered something he shouldn't have. Typhoid fever. Allegedly from contaminated water in the Euphrates. The symptoms were almost perfect: high fever, abdominal pain, sweating, and ultimately extreme weakness leading to coma. Or, more ironic, malaria. The conqueror from Macedonia was finally defeated by a tiny mosquito in the marshes of Babylon. Or perhaps acute pancreatitis from days of endless feasting and drinking, celebrating both victory and the death of his close friend, Hephaestion. These narratives raced against each other, each with its own truths and flaws. Every second of those 15 minutes was filled with the shouts of physicians, Alexander's increasingly labored breaths, and the puzzled stares exchanged between his generals, Ptolemy, Seleucus, who were already thinking about dividing the empire before their king had even died. All those theories, the intricate poison, the deadly disease, make sense. But there is one small, often overlooked fact, a detail that changes everything. Alexander did not die in 15 minutes. That was the peak of an agony that lasted nearly 2 weeks. Those 15 minutes were likely the final window in which someone could have acted. The 15 minutes where the poison, if it was poison, showed its peak effect. Or the 15 minutes where the illness delivered its final blow. But the true twist isn't in how he died. That is merely a medical and historical puzzle. The real twist is this: Alexander's corpse did not decompose for almost 3 weeks after his death. Yes, in the sweltering heat of Babylon, the body of a man that should have begun decomposing within hours remained intact, fresh, and looked as if he were only sleeping, according to historical accounts. This changes everything. What poison, what disease, has a preservative effect like that? None. Modern science is baffled. Some call it a very rare natural phenomenon. But in dark whispers, some say it was the final proof given by the gods. A sign that he truly was no ordinary man. Or, perhaps, it was a side effect of the antidote. What? Yes. The most conspiratorial and shocking theory is, Alexander was always wary of poison. He may have built an immunity to certain toxins by regularly consuming them in small doses, an ancient practice called Mithridatism. The poison given to him might have been one he was treating himself against. But the dose was too large, or the poison was altered, so that his immune system, accustomed to toxins, became overwhelmed and reacted in a strange way, preserving his body from within in a final, terrifying irony. So, he did not die from common poison or disease. He died because his own protection turned against him and destroyed him. His death was not an assassination or a curse of nature, but rather a tragic accident of a survival strategy that backfired. The conqueror of the world was finally conquered not by an enemy on the battlefield, not by a conspiracy in the throne room, but by the illusion of security he built himself. The poison ultimately won, not because it was lethal, but because the king was too strong against it.